So welcome back to another episode of the Backholder Pod. So I think currently in current times, in the current atmosphere, many people are gearing up because we are all looking forward to a public holiday. It's coming soon because of the presidential election that is currently ongoing. And I think the three specific candidates that just got their approval by the elections department. We have Mr. Ng Kok Song, Mr. Taman, and Mr. Tan Kin Lian. So I think just to provide you guys with a quick breakdown, I'll pass the time over to Kelvin to speak specifically about a brief background, maybe on individual candidates, and then we will go more from there.
Just to disclaimer a bit, I haven't really heard about them prior to this whole election thing going on. So here's what I found online. Ng Kok Song, he's actually the ex Chief Investment Officer for GIC. I think he has like 40 years of investment experience. So he started without any experience, but because Singapore back then was like a startup, considered a startup. So they just randomly throw a guy in. Probably not randomly, there are criteria, right? But he did say that he didn't have experience. He didn't even know how to invest right at the start. So that's how this whole startup culture is. Then the second guy is called Tan Kin Lian. He's actually the head of NTUC Income in the past. He was actually part of the candidate back in the 2011 presidential election, but obviously he didn't want. If you check online, right, Tan Kin Lian is also, a lot of netizens probably like him because he likes to post a lot of meme stuff. And he did say something controversial, which is like we should spend more of the reserve money rather than saving up for future generation. So he's a bit more controversial, this guy. And the last guy is Taman. I think everyone knows him. He was 2 decades. He's actually the deputy premier and then senior minister. Then so he's actually related a bit to PAP. Yeah, so these are the three guys.
He's not a bit related. He's totally related to,
Totally
to
related.
PAP. I think he's the establishment. He's the full political affiliated to the current ruling party. I think Mr. Ng Kok Song, there is currently some debate or argument ongoing saying that whether he's part of the establishment or not. And then Mr. Tan Kin Lian is specifically the opposition candidate because he has not much affiliation. But maybe just to provide some background context, does Bunti or Eric or anyone here have any personal contact or any connections back then so they can share any more insights on the specific candidates?
I don't know. I can only share that Mr. Tan Kin Lian, he's the ex-CEO of NTUC Income. But I think during his time, if you read the Wikipedia, it says that the total assets under NTUC Income, right, grow by 600 times in 30 years. So I think that's quite impressive. But I think the details, I don't have much details there.
So maybe you go around the table and then we'll ask who would you actually vote for? Sorry, no. The vote is secret. But I'm just saying maybe I want to pass the time over to Eric. I just wanted to get your opinion, as somebody that's seen through many cycles of elections, whether is it the normal general elections or presidential elections. What's your general thoughts on the three candidates?
I think my take, I'm not very sure whether this will be the outcome. My take is that most likely Taman will get the job. That's my prediction. Obviously, it's just a prediction. I don't know whether you
But why do you think that Taman will likely become?
Okay, one thing is because when you listen to Taman speak, right? If you go to YouTube and listen to his those international conferences, there'll be an interviewer asking him very tough questions, and then he will be able to somehow, they'll ask, Singapore is a dictatorship and all those things, very thorny issues, right? Then he'll be able to, what's the word for it? Chinese is very 婉转, able to make it very palatable for everybody. Everyone good point. He's able to make people think without being very in their face, very offensive. He kind of appeal to their logic. So I would say he's a very persuasive person. He's able to persuade at the highest level, people who are who are very combative, when they meet him, right, he will be able to persuade and turn them to his point of view, and then they're like, yeah, correct, you're right. Then like yeah. So I'm very impressed by a lot of his speeches. If you Google his international conferences lah, those I'm very impressed by those. I think as a voter, I want to see someone who is able to think for themselves. Like they have a very sound reasoning process rather than parroting like what is the current narrative. Like,
But I would put in and say, I think from Ng Kok Song's interview and from how he portrayed himself, I think he's pretty polished, professional, and he also has that specific quality of being able to think. And on top of that, he's not part of the ruling party or he doesn't have any political affiliation. Wouldn't it be more?
for me, I don't see like, okay, ruling party or not ruling party, it's like your investment philosophy, right? You don't care whether it's from China, it's from US, as long as they can make money. Hey Mao, Pai Mao, we don't really care, as long as you can catch mice. So for me, whether or not you trumpet like you're independent or whatnot, okay, there's maybe a kind of one of the things that you look at. But for me personally, I want to look for someone that able to hold up our country's image, like someone who is able to hold his own, rather than just being the guy that smiles, take picture, shake hand, the typical, the stereotypical view of what a president does. That's the only thing that he does, is like just sit there, smile, look handsome. Like, no lah, hopefully not lah. I mean, I hope to have someone who is able to think and then give his opinion on important matters. Of course, he doesn't have any say, I think, in the law making lah. But at least someone who's able to be a very good leader, so called, even though it's maybe you don't really have the actual power to do anything.
Actually, on that note, right, I share the same opinion as Eric. I think that I do think that Taman is gonna win the elections. My logic is quite simple. I think out of all the PAP slate of candidates that they have, Taman is probably one of the most, if not the most popular candidate, even amongst the opposition people. Just look at the GRC that he stands in, I think Jurong GRC. If you plot a graph, right, compared to the rest of the constituency, it's not even a close fight. Jurong is always 70-80%. Like PAP is always a landslide. The rest is like sometimes it's close, sometimes it's not. Even at the trough of the supporters of the PAP, I think they still managed to get like 66-67%, which is a very high vote count. That's number one. I think number two, in terms of how I look at these elections, I did share in the group. Maybe I just share out as well. I feel like, this is my personal opinion, I feel like this election is essentially a referendum on PAP. Because now, I think the atmosphere, there's a little bit of Mingyuan, I don't know how to translate. Maybe some frustrations amongst the population about cost of living, housing, and blah, 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 which is what Tan Kin Lian is basically biting on. I think you look at some of his press conference, it's basically just biting on using reserve, giving the money back to the people. Whether is it populist or not, I'll leave it up to you to decide. But I think the idea of a bit of frustration on the ground is coming up. So some voters might have the perspective that, hey, I'm just gonna vote someone else just to express my disgruntlement or express my unhappiness to us. In a way, ask PAP to, hey, you need to know that we have these problems and maybe you can solve some issue. So that's my idea on this PE. I think that it's essentially a air quotes referendum on the PAP, and it's the vote count that matters, not really who wins, because I think the results are already set. But in terms of the vote percentage, if Taman doesn't win more than 60%, I think it's quite dangerous for, or at least it's a calling lah. It's a alarm to the PAP. And I think just a very interesting analogy my politics prof shared with me the other time in one of the lectures. He said that how popular Taman is very simple. Today, let's say the four of us go together, election in Jurong GRC with Taman. we will automatically win also. I think I can bet good money on that 4 random people go into a GRC with Taman, and then we go for a election, we will also win in Jurong GRC. That's how capable, of how strong the signaling effect from Taman himself. So which is why I'm also fairly confident that we will see who the PE is, but I think it's the percentage vote share that really matters. But yeah, I think open to discussion if Kelvin or Bunty have any perspective on this.
But it seems like now talking about Taman is like people are voting him because he is PAP, right? Then the question is, do we want a PAP to be the president? Because if it's okay for PAP to be president, why Taman needs to, like resign his PAP positions before he contests for the presidents, right? So the president needs to be above all these, different political parties. He needs to dissociate himself from that. Not just like, the former posts, former positions and his affiliations, but just the the perceptions as well. I think this is something that some people will see very importantly to have a independent president. Some people like Eric say, doesn't matter. I'm just okay with Taman. So I think different people have different views.
But it's quite interesting. Every PE, there will always be a PAP candidate. There'll be somebody that the establishment supports. So there's just some. But yeah, Kelvin, I saw you unmuted.
So it's like 3 different by voting but these 3 candidates have 3 different viewpoints, right? For Taman, you are betting that if you are voting for him, it's like you are agreeing that you are in line with PAP's values and whatever. For Kok Song, it's like that he is an independent, so he can provide independent voice and is not portrayed as controlled by the government or something like that. Plus, he has the GIC, the investment experience, which is actually related to the president's role because they have what they call the second key. He can approve or reject the government from using the reserves money. Then for Tan Kee Lian, right, he's more like, people see him as a troller, but actually he's not. He's trying to stand on the side of Singaporeans. So he brings up that the CPF thing, which is that saying that they are saving too much, so the current generation is suffering or whatever, and he's trying to reduce the NS 2 years. That was his plan. That's his plan. Whether or not the government listen to it is another matter. So all 3 of them have different things to offer. And I think this election is a lot more maybe special as compared to the previous 4 elections where almost all of them were like walkovers. But yeah, I'm actually on the side of cheating. Taman is very likely to win just because he shows his face a lot more compared to all the rest. It's like I haven't even heard of the two of them prior to this. So it's very likely all the older generations will vote for Taman.
On the point on the role of the president, right? Because I think specific candidates have been championing for certain causes, which we don't even know whether he has the power to do anything in that regard. So, Kevin, maybe you want to share what's the specific roles of the presidency?
So the role of the candidate, the first one is for diplomacy this diplomacy. So it's like what Eric said. He is good at influencing people. So unlike what you think, the president doesn't just sit around do nothing. He actually goes around to mingle. I think mingle. He socialize with other people from other countries So for this, I think all 3 of them actually fulfill this criteria. They are good at talking mingling or socializing with other people. The second one is more like they don't really have real legislative powers, but they have actually the veto power. So just to give some context, the position was actually came into this whole constitution thing back in 1991 because they wanted to strengthen checks and balances because they are afraid of some rogue government, right? Rogue government doing things like raiding the reserves, taking over the country, basically. So the president is there to prevent that from happening. Then the first president only came into power in 1993. So when people ask, right, what is the role of the president? What are they actually doing? What is Halimah doing of this entire past 5 years? I think the reason they haven't seen any of the president doing anything is because Singapore has been doing very well all this while. So it's like your IT guy, right? IT guy. He exists there, but you won't know he exists because the server is running properly. It's only when the server has gone down, right? You will look for the IT guy. I think the president is exactly like the IT guy, where if nothing happens, right, they are just there just to meet people, shake hands at the NDP. Basically, this so they think that they are quite useless. But if there's a rogue government, right, the president is actually quite important in this case, because I think they can veto, they can approve public office holders such as the Chief Justice, Chief of Defense Force, so they can say, I approve or disapprove this guy from coming into power. Then they can also do like approve or disapprove detention orders, investigation, restraining orders. Oh yeah, the external open house, shake hands basically. But basically, the president is there to approve or disapprove important stuff like the reserves and the positions So since right now everything is doing well, the president is that people will feel that he or she is quite useless in this case
Bunty, I saw you on mute.
Yeah, but Halimah just approved 80 billions of draw from the reserves during the COVID times to save us, right? Probably I'm still, keeping my job because of that approval.
So then this comes the thing, right? People will say that because she approves, she's seen as the yes person, right? Because if she doesn't approve, this means that okay, people will say that she's thinking for our reserves. But if she approves, how come she's not objecting to this? Because it will seem like she's trying to raid the reserve or whatever, right?
I think it's quite a hard job. Regardless, it's probably like Calvin's job. Regardless of what he do, people will scold him. Whether he say buying Tesla is good or buying Tesla is bad. There is always people on the other
not
side.
Even close My job is not very close to their importance
Right. So I think on the last point, I think there is also, because a lot of all this discussion about custodial powers, being representative of the state and being a preventive measure for a rogue government, right? Do you think that there is like, I think a lot of all these constitution amendments and stuff is done or passed quite some time back. Do you think these factors are relevant anymore? Like, albeit a little bit controversial, do you think we should improve in terms of the president, what the president should do, what kind of appointments he should have additionally on top of the current job scope? Just wanted to hear your thoughts, Eric.
Wow, this one tough question though. Because I don't know whether you have seen this video, this short clip of Lee Kuan Yew when he first noted the idea of elected president. I think in 1991 or something like that. So he was giving this National Day rally. And I think Lee Hsien Loong was referring to it in the recent TNA video, right? So saying that was the year he entered politics. Then he attended that rally. Then Lee Kuan Yew was talking about why they want to have this elected president. Because in case of a freak election result, right, then they will like so-called raid the reserve. And everything is open for them to like just take. So they actually came up with this elected president idea, right? As giving him a role as holding the second key to the reserve, so that the coalition government doesn't go in and so-called raid the reserve. Yeah, so that was the initial purpose of the president. So I don't know whether Bunty and Kelvin are also aware. We had a fifth president, right? Mr. Ong Teng Cheong. So he was president in 1993, elected there. He was also from the PAP. He was like a minister and all that before that. Then he quit and then become president. But at that time they had this dispute over access of information regarding our financial reserve. Because I think so-called the story goes, not really a story. I think it's a factual thing. You can go and check it out. So he wanted to know how much reserves we have, national reserve. Okay, as you all know that I think Prime Minister will have this information. All the different branches of it, he knows. And I also think that the finance minister knows. And probably one or two other person. I think Ong Teng Cheong wanted to know what was our financial assets, the totality of it. he said, hey, since I'm the custodian, right? I thought I'm the one with the second key. Maybe I should know what is the situation. Then I can make better decision. Then I think the government was saying that it will take 56 man years to produce the dollars and cent value of the immovable assets. I got this from like the article, the Wikipedia article. So I think more or less from what I remember, at that time I think I was still quite young. I think that was the gist of it. He wanted to know how much. Then he said, yeah, you want to know it take 56 years. But then the strange thing is the PM knows. How come you never take 56 years? That one I also don't know what to say lah. But maybe someone brave can ask Mr. Lee Hsien Loong. But anyway, so that was our fifth president. Ever since that incident, I think in my mind at least, my own impression, as a young person, I realized that hey, probably our president is installed there more as a safeguard from the PAP point of view, from the government's point of view. So that's I think the intention of Lee Kuan Yew lah. He wanted someone to like act as a second barrier to the reserve that we have so painstakingly built up. So that is like a little bit of backstory.
So in this edition or in this aspect, do you think we should add more stuff? Like why stop at second barrier? Why not include a third barrier as well?
Because even if you in the first place, right, you give the president this veto power, right? The president also have to be subject to the presidential council, is it? I don't know, is that the actual name?
Council of Presidential Advisors.
Yeah, presidential advisor, CPA. So if they advise him like, okay, you should approve the budget and all these things, right? Then the president said, no, I don't want to approve the budget. Then they can just bring it to the parliament, and the parliament obviously 2/3, right? PAP has more than 2/3. So if they vote yes, because they have the party whip, right? So they say yes, then they together with the CPA can veto the president's veto. So it's like president is like useless.
Right. No lah, I think that's why how they designed the system is very interesting, because what they're afraid of, which is like what you said, a free election results.
Yeah.
But usually in a free election results, let's say an opposition comes into power, they usually won't get that 2/3. Or maybe I would presume that they get something slightly over 50. Or if there is a breakup, then suddenly they form a coalition and PAP might lose the majority, so-called.
Yeah.
So in this case, the president can still veto. But in the event where they suddenly wins 2/3 and the president veto goes back to the house, the opposition wins 2/3, then they will still pass the whole thing. That's how I think they think about or conceive the entire idea of why is there they can veto a veto. You get what I mean?
So you just think about it lah. It's something like the G20 or G7, right? Like certain countries have like veto power that they can veto the rest of the country. So it's a bit like a power play kind of thing. So if you're the one in power, you want to install a system that keeps you in power. Sorry, I gotta go and close my window. Raining.
No worries. So I think on that note, I don't know whether we want to round up the discussion, whether Boon Tian and Kelvin has any concluding thoughts. Kelvin?
Vote wisely.
Yes.
The election is next week, right? Next week. So regardless of who will win, I think the votes will matter quite a lot. It will send a signaling effect to whoever is in power. Yeah.
Yeah. Eric just went missing. But anyway, we hope you guys enjoyed the discussion. I know this might get slightly political. Please try to this is on the YouTube public platform, so I know some of you can remain anonymous, but be slightly kinder in your words, and we'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.